Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're just going to be talking about all the books that I read in May. I read a total of 14 books, which is actually a little bit more than I usually read. I will read on average like 8 to 12 books a month usually. So I had a very, very good reading month in May, and I read a lot of really like top tier books this year for me. So let's just get into it. I read a couple pretty popular books, and I might have a few controversial thoughts on a couple of them. We'll just talk about all the things. We'll get into the nitty gritty. So let's just dive into it. These aren't going to be in any particular order. I'm just going to kind of grab them off the top and then we'll just go from there. We have a little visitor who is wreaking havoc today. The first book that we'll talk about is The Housemaid. I actually read this in my Free Little Libraries vlog, which thank you guys so much for the support on that video. It just has done really well, and I was not expecting that at all, and it just makes my like heart really happy. I mean, this is a really small book channel, so thank you guys so much for that. So yes, so we picked this book in the Free Little Libraries vlog. So essentially I just like went around to the Free Little Libraries around me and donated a few books, and then ended up finding this one, and we read it in that video and I reviewed it in that video. So I don't want to say too much on this one because I have already reviewed it, but this was a like solid 3-star thriller for me. I don't read thrillers. They're just not my genre. I get scared really easily, and so they make me nervous. But this one was like super palatable, super tolerable. It was not really that scary. It was more like a twisty turny type of book. I did really enjoy it. It was super fast. I read it in one sitting. So I would recommend this to somebody who is kind of like me and doesn't usually dabble in the thrillers genre. So definitely a really good read. It was fun, quick, easy. I had a good time, and it made me want to go back to find some more Free Little Libraries and definitely do that all over again. Oh, buddy boy. Are we gonna get through this video or what? Go on. Go lay down. He's like a big dog child. The next book that we read in May was Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. Maybe I'll be able to talk about this book without Hachi squeaking his toy. We'll see. I don't know, you can't see it. I hid his toy up there, so he won't be able to get it this time. This is already so chaotic. Abby Jimenez just knows how to write a good character-driven, soul-wrenching romance. This was about a girl who's actually a doctor, which to me that was already very relatable because I'm not a doctor, but I am a nurse and I work in the healthcare field. So like a lot of the things that she was talking about and the struggles and stuff that this character is going through, I can see and I can feel that because those are some of the things that like I feel as a healthcare worker. And so that already was like very relatable for me. So I think this is a really good one for me to pick up first by her. So this girl, this doctor, she goes and she's in this like bad relationship, and she has a lot of pressure from her mom and her dad to like follow through with this relationship, but she knows that she doesn't want to. And she ends up meeting this guy who lives in like a small town away from the city. You know, they end up having like a romance, and she's seeing all these positive things about being outside of her world and outside of her life, and like kind of looking at her life from a different perspective and seeing how detrimental it is to her and her health. And so they end up obviously having a romance and falling in love, and it all ends out really well and really perfect. But the turmoil and the struggles that these characters go through is so heart-wrenching. Like it really is heart-wrenching. And to me, I'm more of like a fantasy reader usually, and so the like blood and death and gore and stuff, like that type of soul-wrenching is different from like a contemporary romance soul-wrenching. And so going into any contemporary romance with like people saying like, yes, it's gonna rip your heart out, blah blah blah, I'm like, okay, yeah, but like how much can it actually do that? Because I'm used to like people getting stabbed in the heart on the battlefield. But no, Abby Jimenez really knows how to rip your heart out without a sword. I'm really sorry if you can hear my dog back there. He's just like wreaking havoc today. So yes, this was a 5-star contemporary romance for me. I absolutely loved it. I would recommend it to anyone. So the next book that I read on a plane ride actually from North Carolina back to Austin is The Dagger and the Flame by Catherine Doyle. I absolutely love this book. I ate this book up. I've had this on my shelves for a while, and I have been very excited to get to it. And honestly, it absolutely lived up to the hype that I had in my head. I kind of like avoided any type of like reading vlogs or spoilers or anything up until I was able to read this, because I just didn't want it to become overhyped in my head or anything like that, or like the bar to be raised too much, because I feel like that's usually when I end up getting disappointed. But this book did not disappoint. This was such a fun romantasy read. It was very action-packed. There's a lot of cool like magic interest. The premise of this book surrounds a kingdom where there are two groups of people who are kind of like, I guess, opposing each other. There are the cloaks and the daggers, and both groups of people use the same type of magic but in different ways, and in the way that you use the magic kind of determines on how it affects you. And cloaks are kind of known as the thieves who use the magic in a more healthy way that doesn't affect them personally, and the daggers use the magic in a certain way that kind of like affects them in the long run. This girl, our female main character, in the beginning of the book, her mom gets killed. She gets murdered. I believe it was like a house fire, and this girl runs away and she seeks refuge with the cloaks. She has a secret that we don't know yet until like the very end, and she's keeping the secret throughout the story. She meets the male main character who has a lot of the shadow magic, who's actually one of the daggers, so the opposing group, and his mission is to kill her. So it's kind of like a cat and mouse thing throughout the whole book, which was really, really fun to read about. I just remember it just being really wholesome, really believable. I connected with the characters immediately, and I just had a really, really fun time reading it. It was just very well balanced, had just about like everything that I would have wanted in a fantasy romance. Was just like a classically built fantasy romance with a really cool like magical interest, and I would recommend this to anybody. I think anybody would really love this. It was very digestible, and I've already have the second book on pre-order that comes out in December, so very excited about that one, and I loved it so much. The next book that we have to talk about is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. This was the book that I picked from my TBR jar that has the books that have been on my TBR the longest, and this was one of them. I bought this in like one of my first semesters of nursing school a couple years ago, and I bought it because I got an A on my test, which I thought was kind of funny. I don't know how I feel about this book. I don't think anybody really prepared me for what this book was. I just know that everybody really just said that it was kind of twisty, and R.F. Kuang is a wonderful writer, and that it makes you think. And honestly, that's like exactly what it was. Like, it kind of creeped me out a little bit. So the premise of this book is you're starting out following a writer who is kind of like a mediocre writer. Like, she's doing okay, but she's not like super famous, you know, like none of her books have like gone viral. None of her books have like done really, really well in the publishing industry. And she's friends with somebody who she went to school with and went to college with who has made it. She's like sold a bunch of copies of her book. Everybody knows her in the publishing industry. Everybody worships her and loves her books. She gets pushed out there by publishing, and this whole premise basically follows this mediocre writer, our main female main character, as she's like yearning and kind of like jealous of this other girl, and this other girl ends up dying. I won't tell you how, because it like shocked me. I had no idea this is what was going to happen. But so this famous writer, she dies, and this mediocre writer, our female main character, was there. She was like present during the death, and she ends up stealing a copy of this manuscript that supposedly nobody has seen before, and she publishes the manuscript as her own. And so this whole book is to kind of talk about and explore the publishing industry, like the deep kind of dark secrets of the publishing industry, and as well as kind of being like a thriller. So I don't know, it was very interesting. It was very good. You could tell that R.F. Kuang is a fantastic writer. Like, she knows what she's doing, because it like hooked me in right away, and it did not let me go until the very end. I would definitely recommend this to somebody, especially people who are interested in publishing and writing and English and stuff like that. But yes, so Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. I mean, I would give this like a 4-star, 4.5 star. The next book that I read was The Wild Huntress. I absolutely loved this book. This was such a fun read. This was definitely a fun read for like spring going into summer too, because it's very much like green, and like there's plant magic in here. It is surrounding the wild hunt, and so essentially we're following our female main character, who is a huntress, and she is like a huntress for hire essentially, and somebody from like the kingdom comes and hires her to basically go along with him on the wild hunt to win this game and essentially be granted a wish by one of the elven kings, or the other king. You're following her point of view as well as others' point of view, going through this quest and this adventure, going and fighting in the wild hunt. They're having to like find these certain keys, and there's a lot of cool magical interest. There's animal companionship that is like kind of like a question and a mystery throughout the whole book, and then you kind of finally figure out and like find out what it's about at the end. It's just really funny. I think the banter was really good in this book, and I loved just like the friendships that were formed in here, and it was just my kind of book, and it made me just like so happy to read it. So I am recommending this to everybody now. I loved it. I had so much fun with it. This was also the last book that I read on my May TBR as well. The next two books that we have to talk about are these two spicy little novellas that I had such a fun time with. The first one I read was The Mountains Made of Glass. This is the second one to that, which is Apples Dipped in Gold. I'm pretty sure this is going to be a series that she's doing. These are by Scarlett St. Clair, who is the author of the Touch of Darkness series, I think. These were so much fun. These are fairy tale retellings and inspired by like folklore and like the Grimm fairy tales, which I think was super fun. And at the end of each book, she has kind of like a description of each fairy tale that she got and she used as inspiration in these, and it's kind of cool to like read about her thoughts and stuff in the process of writing them. But so basically you're following two female main characters in each of these who are essentially just like humans who are living in this like human world and get found by one of the 7 fae princes, I think. It's ultimately a spicy romantasy, and so at the end like they end up falling in love, and you get to like experience all of these really cool like magical fairy tale like settings and atmospheres. I just loved it. It was super cute, super fun. There's a lot of also animal companions in each of these, and you basically are just like following these girls as they go on this journey to like basically save the princes, and it's just fun. Like, it was just such a fun time, and I've had this one specifically on my TBR for a long time. Like, it's been on my Kindle Unlimited for years, like one of the first Kindle Unlimited books that I downloaded. And so I'm really happy that I ended up picking it up because I've been wanting to read this one at least for a long time. So I read this in North Carolina and I immediately went to the store to pick this one up. I would highly recommend both of these. This one I liked a little bit more than this one, but I still loved both of them. The next book we have to talk about is Fantasma. I did already talk about this one more in depth in my cozy reading vlog. I went out to my family's property and spent a rainy week there, but basically it surrounds like a deadly game to the very specifics, and we're following this girl who's a necromancer, and she is going and entering herself into this deadly game to save her sister, or so she thinks, and she ends up meeting a phantom within this game, and he turns out to be a little bit more than just a phantom, but that's the love interest. And so we're following her as she's going throughout this game. She's kind of special because she's already like a necromancer, and it's just kind of like dark and creepy gothic-y vibes, and it's funny, and the banter is really good in this one as well. I just had a fun time with this one. I think I rated this one like a 4-star, 3.5, 4-star, something like that, but she's definitely a little dirty, definitely a little beat up. I would highly recommend this one to someone who is like starting out on their like fantasy romantasy journey. This was definitely like a really easy one to get through. The next one that I read at the same place was Morgan by Mary E. Pearson. I have talked about this one also. I can't stop looking at just like the end papers and the artwork and stuff in this. Like, it's just such a pretty book. I love little books that have art in them. Like, can we normalize having art in your books? Like, I think that's just so fun. So this is the author that wrote the Selection series as well as the Dance of Thieves duology. And I have read the Dance of Thieves duology, and I thought originally that this was a sequel to that, but it's actually not. It's a sequel to the series that I have not read yet. But I love this very, very much. This kind of like is a foretelling or like a foreshadowing story of the Selection series. And even without reading that, I still really love this. This was ultimately a love story between a young girl, Morgan, and a young boy, and you're following them throughout their life as they're kind of going through some struggles, and I don't think they're really supposed to be together, but they end up, you know, falling in love. You just go through their journey that way, and it's just like a beautiful, sweet story, and I just really loved it. So if you've read the Selection series, I highly would recommend you pick this up. Even if you haven't read it, I would highly recommend picking up this book if you're looking for something that's sweet and cute and easy and fun and just like magical. The next one that I finished in May was Empire of Storms. This is my reread of Throne of Glass. These books just smell so much like books and I love it. So this is the second time I've read this book and I did love this book. It reminded me so much why I love these characters and the story, because if you know this book, you know all of the things that happen in it, and especially the end. I just forgot how sad it is. And I'm currently reading Tower of Dawn right now, and I'm just sad that that book gets so much hate because I'm loving it. And I loved it the first time, and I'm loving it even more honestly the second time. It just makes me sad that it gets so much hate because I still think it's really, really good. But yeah, so I finished this one in the month of May. And then this is actually the first book that I read in May. This is the Reaper at the Gates. This is the third book in the Ember and the Ashes series. And actually just finished the fourth book this morning. I was trying to get it done by May, but I was just so busy this week. But yeah, so this one, not my favorite out of the series. This is probably my least favorite out of the series. I just think that it seemed a little chaotic, a little off plot, not a whole lot of like organization, and we kind of like veered off in different directions for this one. I think towards the end it kind of rounded up a little bit, but just like, I don't know, it just didn't seem like it flowed well like the first two did. And it's really unfortunate because I love the first two, like 4 and 5 stars. This one was like a 3-star. I still love the characters. It just wasn't as well. I just don't feel like it was as well organized as the first two. The last 3 books that we have to talk about are the big 3. These were the 3 new releases that I read this month. We'll just go in chronological order. How about that? The first one that I read was Silver Elite by Danny Francis. I know that this book unfortunately has been getting a lot of hate and like criticism since coming out, but I still stand by my thoughts and feelings on it from when I first read it. I think I understand where people are coming from. I think the marketing was probably a little off as far as how they were marketing it and like the target audience and stuff. The book itself and the story and the plot line and the adventure and the pacing and all of that, I think was phenomenal. I think that it was super fun. It was super banter filled. Love story was beautiful between the female and male characters. There's a lot of fun like action and adventure and like thrilling moments. And it was just like action packed. Like something was always happening. And I love that so much about a book. And this book I read in like one sitting. This is like, I don't even know, like a 500-page book, and I read this in one sitting. It's a chunky one. And that just, I think, speaks for itself that that's the kind of book that it is. Just a fast-paced, high stakes, high adventure, fun, banter-filled story. And that's what I think it's all about. Yeah, I am just sad that like there's always just so much criticism when it comes to like highly anticipated, highly publicized, highly marketed books. And unfortunately, things get maybe marketed differently than what they actually are in order to get like certain views and target audiences and stuff. And yes, that's unfortunate, but looking at the book itself, I think that for me personally, you know, my own judgment and everything, I think that it was a really, really fun read and I would recommend it to everybody. I think that if that's what you're looking for, a fun time, this is definitely what you're gonna get when you're reading this book. And yeah, that was that. I'm very happy that I picked this book up, and I'm glad that people convinced me to. The next book that I read, I have been so scared to talk about this book on here because so many people love this book and are like raving and raving about how amazing and good this book is. And I'm not saying that it's bad, but I just have like a lot of qualms with this book. I gave this book like a 3-star. I almost DNF'd it twice, and I'm so scared to say that online because so many people are gonna probably hate that. But I just had so many issues with the pacing of this book. And I think that the last 100 pages, the last 150 pages were really good and filled with a lot of answers to questions and stuff. But the first 350 pages, like I was struggling so hard to get through. And I think it was just because like there was a lot of repetition in the plot. Like I just felt like the same thing was happening over and over again when it comes to the plot and the scenes, but also to like the sayings and the banter. Descriptions were being used multiple different times in the same way. And I don't know, I just was not, for me, I just don't think I really enjoyed that at all. It really, really made it hard for me to get through the first 350 pages. And like, I only finished this book because I needed to know how it ended, and I needed to know why people were freaking out so much about it and make me feel less crazy for not like enjoying the first like 75% of it. But like I said, the last part of this book really like rounded it out and like made it make sense, but it didn't really make up for like the first 75% of the book. I just don't want to struggle through a book just to get to the good part at the very end. Another thing about it too, which is I think just like a personal preference, but the setting of this book was very like old elven kind of feeling, like witchery vibes, and I just felt like the dialogue was like a little off for me personally. The female main character specifically, I think was just using a lot of like modern language and modern dialogue, and it just didn't really like connect the dots for me. Like in my brain, I couldn't connect that with, you know, the storyline and the plot. Kind of kept me from like connecting with the characters and stuff. I don't know, it was just really unfortunate because people always talk about the banter and stuff for this book, and I just didn't get it, unfortunately. I did really enjoy the Witcher vibes of our male main character, but I think it was dragged out a little bit too long. I think for the first 75%, all I really knew about him is that he had green eyes and he had like a low chuckle, and then when we finally did get more from him, it was like already past my like I just didn't really care very much anymore. Those things being said and like out of the way, a few things that I did really love about this book is the atmosphere and like the aspect of that. I loved being in the world. I felt like it was very creative. It was very beautiful. It was very much like this is the atmosphere that we're in the whole time. And I think that this is where I would like to live. Thank you. If I can, I would love to live here. And I loved that aspect of the book. I loved the premise of it and the plot line. I thought that was really fun. And there's a lot of like mystery, and the whole time I had a bunch of questions, and I think that that keeps my interest a little bit more. And that's kind of like one of the reasons why I kept going and really wanted to make it to the end to like figure out what was going to happen and stuff. So those are a couple things that I did like about it. I think just overall the pacing was just a little bit off for me. Dialogue was just a little bit too modernized compared to relative to like the setting and what was going on and stuff. And there's a lot of just like repetition and stuff in the plot and the dialogue and the banter and the scenes and things. So, but I love the book. It's beautiful and the setting was beautiful, and Devoney Perry's writing seems really fun, but I think it might be more geared to like a contemporary setting versus like a fantastical setting, in my personal opinion. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Shield of Sparrows. I mean, I might recommend it to somebody who is like versed in like a romantasy or like fantasy type of book, but I wouldn't recommend it to somebody who's new to the fantasy genre, because I think that ultimately they would just stop reading it halfway through, because there's not a whole lot of interest until you get to the very, very end of it. So those are my thoughts. And I'm sorry if I hurt anybody's feelings. And then the last book, actually, which is really exciting to talk about, is The Night and the Moth by Rachel Gillig. This book I loved. Not only is she just like absolutely beautiful, but she is beautiful on the inside as well. And wow, these end papers are just gorgeous. So The Night and the Moth, you're essentially following, if I can even describe the premise of it without screwing it up, you're following this girl who is living at this old Gothic cathedral. She has this type of magic where she goes and essentially drowns in the water. She dies. She drowns and she wakes up and she's in a dream. And she's doing this to go through this dream and read the omens. People who hire them or come to this cathedral, her and the group of girls, are expected to do this. This setting is very Gothic, very dark, very mysterious, very much Rachel Gillig's like classic, you know, Gothic writing. It feels like you're in this cover right here. And I just feel like maybe going into it blind is the best thing. I don't want to say too much on it, because I don't want to ruin the vibes or ruin the expectations that you may have. But I think that going into it blind was really special, because I had no idea what the premise was. I have no idea what to expect except the Gothic style feel, and that's exactly what I got. I got a really fun story. The banter in this book was ridiculous. It was so good. It's not really like what I would have expected from this kind of book, but it just added to it so much more, because it kind of like brings a little bit of life to like what's going on. And then the last thing that I loved about this book so much is the side character, who is the gargoyle, who ends up playing a huge part and a huge role in the storyline. Throughout the whole book, you just learn to love him so much, and it was just so cool and so sweet how she added that in and ended up bringing it all to the end and like giving him a place in that story. I also just like love the premise of like the girls. They're very independent and like they're strong-willed and strong-minded, and I love that representation in these books. Overall, this was a 5-star, 100% a 5-star for me, and I would recommend it to so many people who would vibe with this type of writing style. She just has like beautiful poetic prose, and I think this book was very much like character-driven versus plot driven, which is a little bit different than like the One Dark Window duology. Going into this book, for some reason, I just had this idea that it was a standalone and that this was it. This is like the book and this is the story, and it was all gonna wrap up at the end. And if you've read this, you know that it doesn't do that. It's not a standalone, it's a series, and you're left on a cliffhanger at the very end, and it's a very sad cliffhanger. And so I was like shook at the end of this book that it was not over. And yeah, I was shook for like 24 hours after I finished this book. I can officially say that this is worth the hype. I think that so many people are gonna love this book so much. So those are all of the books that I read in May. There are 14 total books here, and I'm not even gonna try and pick them back up because they're all gonna fall, I already know it. But I had a wonderful, wonderful reading month in May. I got a lot of reading in, and I found a lot of really highly rated books. And then I guess we can talk about the books that I bought in May as well. So some of them we've already talked about. So these books that we've already talked about, Silver Elite, Shield of Sparrows, The Knight and the Moth, Morrigan, and Apples Dipped in Gold. I bought these all this month, and I read them all this month, which I think is kind of cool that like I get to read the books that I just bought. That's just really fun to do. So I bought and read 5 new books this month, and then I bought another 4 more books that we'll talk about. The first book that I bought was A Curse Carved in Bone by Daniel L. Jensen. This is the second and final book in the saga of the Unfated. This book is beautiful. It's got these gorgeous, gorgeous foiled edges, and I've had this book pre-ordered for a while after finishing the first book, A Fate Inked in Blood, which is like up there. So I bought this one as a pre-order. I have not read it yet, but I do plan on reading it soon, I think. The next book that I bought was The Goddess of. This book is absolutely stunning on the inside as well. Like the pages are just like really beautiful. This book I bought solely because Lachlan on here told me I needed to buy it, and so I bought it, and I do want to read it soon. It's just gorgeous, and I don't really know too much about the plot at all. I don't think I'm going to like read the back or anything because I just want to go in blind with this one. I just have this feeling that that's what I need to do with this book, so I'm going to. No gods or curses will keep them from each other, which that itself just sounds really fun. Sounds full of yearning and like romance, right? Yeah, so the second book that I bought. The next one that I bought, this is also a pretty popular release, Broken Souls and Bones by L.J. Andrews. I do also plan on getting to this one here soon. This was a new release by her as well. I haven't read anything by her. I know a lot of people really have enjoyed this book so far. Yeah, so I bought this one as well. So this is on my hopefully TBR in the next couple months for sure. And then the last book that I bought this month is This Vicious Dream by Stasha Stark. I don't really know anything about this book. I just know that people have been reading this recently and have really loving it. This was like $10 or something on Amazon, so I was like, you know what? People are loving it. It looks kind of like something I would like. And the back of it sounded really interesting. It says, once I helped save a kingdom. Now I'm trapped in a prison of thorns and nightmares. My crime? Knowing the location of a power that could reshape the world. A grimoire I swore to protect with my life. And this is a romantasy, I believe. So yeah, I kind of like bought this one on a whim a little bit, but it's a nice short little romantasy, and been feeling like I need a short romantasy in my life. I've been reading some long chunky ones recently, and I think I need a good short one. So that's why I bought this one, and I know nothing about it. Classic Alex. I bought a total of, I bought a total of 9 books in May, and I read a total of 14, which, you know, that sounds good. I definitely met my goal. I read more than I bought, but 9 books is still a lot to buy in a month. So my goal is to kind of stick more towards like 4 to 5 books a month. But I'm very excited about all these that I have, all these that I bought, and clearly I read like over half the ones I bought anyways this month, so I think that that kind of like balances it out a little bit. Those are all the books that I read and bought in May. Thank you guys so much for being here. I really appreciate your time, spending a little bit of time with me today. I'm really proud. I read every single book that we had picked in my May TBR, and I loved most every single one of them. So I'm very happy about that. So if you haven't yet, go watch my June TBR. We have so much fun. We have another really amazing stack over there that I cannot wait to get to this month. And we'll do another June wrap up at the end of this month and talk about all those books as well. So again, thank you so much for being here. My name's Alex. I will see you guys in my next video. I post a video every Saturday, so I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.